You're listening to Classeek 15, and a very warm welcome to this bite-sized rehearsal break podcast with classical professionals. I'm Jack Pepper. I'm a composer, radio presenter and author, and today I'm sitting down with Jonathan Papp. He's the artistic director and founder of the George Solti Accademia in Italy, which identifies, trains and supports the next generation of opera singers and répétiteurs. Alumni include mezzo-soprano Igor Ahmetshina in the 2021 cohort and Freddie di Tommaso in 2017. It's a very impressive track record for sure. And no surprise, really, given Jonathan's own celebrated work as coach and accompanist. He's acted as both coach and recital partner for Dame Kirita Kanoa, and over the years, he's been the accompanist to the likes of Sir Thomas Allen and Ian Bostridge. And it can all begin at the Accademia. Jonathan, great to see you. Thank you for joining us to tell us more. Let's begin with why you wanted to set this up. What was the impetus?
The impetus was a programme that I'd been invited to set up at the Tosti Institute in Italy. Short version is the politics changed and it was cancelled at the last moment. And I said if that happened again, I'd be off. It happened again. So then I was looking around to find the possibility of setting this up and was very fortunate in meeting my now chief executive, Candice Wood, and Valerie Solti, who I'd known from previously from working with Sir George. And Candice knew how all the infrastructure of the particular town where Solti lived on the coast and prepared his scores worked, and said, we can make this work. And that was the beginning. The actual impetus beyond that was the rise of German song within the conservatoire establishment pushed Italian into a second place, and yet it's so fundamental for good singing. And so I wanted a place where that was going to be undisturbed by other repertoire, other requirements from a conservatoire, and you could learn how to sing properly.
So how radical is it? How new was it when it was set up?
That's an interesting question. There still are, quite a few programmes run in Italy by American universities and conservatoires. I think ours is more radical in as much as it's so focused just on Italian repertoire, and the people that I bring in are the top level in working in Italian, ranging from at the beginning Mirella Freni and Kirita Kanoa and Jose Carreras to these days with Barbara Frittoli, Charles Castronovo, Freddie de Tommaso. All our alumni are coming back to teach now. Igor Ahmetshina. It's fantastic.
And how does it draw on your experience with Solti? How does it draw on the lessons of George Solti? I mean, how does it maybe train musicians in a way that reflects his own ethos and experiences?
He was rigorous. What was in the score is what you did. And in my early days of working with singers would try and pull you don't understand, I'm a singer, I can do this, I can sing out of time, I can sing out of tune. You don't understand the traditions. In the very, very early days when Mirella Freni joined us, she knew without a score exactly the rhythm, whether there was a rest, the text, everything about it, and you did not deviate from that. And that was the permission, if you like, to just move on and treat singers quite correctly as fellow musicians with the same strictures and rigour that's expected of an instrumentalist.
How would you describe Solti as you say, the rigour and the discipline? How else, if we dig into that more?
The most extraordinary ball of energy, even at the ripe old age that I met him. He was a really amazing musician. And music, it sounds so obvious to say, but it's not always the case. Music was absolutely the heart of everything.
Are there things then that if there's a common theme, a common thread, are there things that you find many students are picking up on or questioning you about now that go back to those very earliest days, or even your encounter with Solti himself? Are there common questions?
I think the most common justification that young singers have when they perform a score in a certain way and it's not what's on the page and it doesn't feel like theirs, they say, well, I've heard X sing it like that on a CD. And you say, well, that has no value. You've actually got to take what's in front of you and make it your own. And by making it your own, even if you're doing exactly what's on the score, it's going to be different from everyone else. You're going to bring something different to it. You don't need to distort the music and be just for the sake of being different.
Where does that come from? Is that a lack of confidence in themselves that you see? Is it a lack of curiosity?
I think some of it is shortcut. If it was good enough for this person and they won everything and sang everywhere, then I shall do the same. Doesn't work like that, sadly. And for a lot of people who don't really speak the language, they don't speak Italian, especially further away from Europe, no one's actually taught them how to translate every single word and understand what that brings to the music or what the music is informing it with, and therefore being able to use that individually rather than in a generic copying way.
So do you think something needs to be changed about the way we teach this?
If there's not good teaching, then yes, it needs to be changed. But I think fundamentally, everyone should be approaching the score like this. I don't think it's a radical new idea on my part, but I think things do go missing within conservatoire and teaching, and the constraints of having to tick off your oratorio class, your German Lieder class, your French song, your melody. I mean, everything is calling on your time. And there's very little downtime within conservatoire to stop and process, which I think on top of your practice, you need that downtime to stop and things go in then.
So if you were sort of drawing up a handy guide of things to make sure you do or don't do if you are studying at conservatoire right now, what would be top of those lists? Either side.
Top of the list is try not to do everything at the same time. Decide which piece you're going to deal with. Learn the melody completely separately from the text, and learn the text dramatically, completely separate from the melody. Then you bring those two things together and you look at the page, having tried your text in 100 different ways, and you see the parameters that Verdi or, I don't know, Bellini has put around that text, and that already dramatically limits what you can do or inspires, and you've got to find a way to justify what they've already decided. And those two things, when you come to bring them together, the text and the melody, you'll find out which is compromising which. Hopefully it will all work very well, but if you've worked out your breath gesture for the melody, which is going to be restructured once you've decided dramatically how to do the text, because that will also dictate where you breathe, then it's a much quicker job. It seems a little detailed at the beginning, but you achieve so much more quickly.
And what about the distractions? What could stop you from doing that? What would be be careful of this if you're studying at a conservatoire?
I actually just think it's your workload and being very specific about what you're looking at, and don't just think you've learned the piece because you know you can somehow get your way through it and wing the language and the melody and fake an emotion.
Honesty shows, doesn't it?
Honesty really tells. And in this world where even more people with even more talent wish to pursue this career, unless you're actually being you, being the musician and the artist, to have these emotions sincerely, which isn't about going to the real place every time because that would kill you. But you need to know what that is, and then through your artistry, you work out how to make someone else feel that.
And how does that translate then to I don't want to use the I word, the industry, the profession, but from studying to then working in this space, are there any maybe fundamental misunderstandings you find young artists, young students have about practical application of what they're learning?
I think the thing that makes me saddest about where the world is at the moment, and that the clever ones can balance but the not so clever ones concentrate upon, is the amount of time and presence you need on social media. And the profession more and more will look at how many hits you have, and that will be a preference for a sponsor or supporter, when in fact there might be a much better talent who doesn't spend that kind of time on their social media. And it makes me very sad, because the amount of time you spend on social media should be going into your music, rather than making everyone feel that you've got the perfect career or possibility already.
But is a young artist right to devote a lot of time?
They need to.
They do need to.
I'm afraid they need to now, yes.
Are there things, though, that you think that maybe they do that they don't need to do? Are there priorities that are sometimes misplaced in a student?
In an early career, the common mistake, there are two things. First of all, feeling that it's your entire responsibility to be heard above the orchestra, rather than that the conductor should be looking after you. And then I keep wanting to come back to workload. You've got to be sensible and concentrate on what you should be doing. And early on in your career, a lot of young singers are tempted to sing much bigger roles than they are either ever going to or are currently physiologically ready for. And whether their technique is actually fundamentally sound, which might enable that to happen. But if it's not, it cannot happen, and they will wreck their voices. And the profession is willing to take that and spit them out when they're useless. So you have to be wise and look after yourself.
Sometimes say no.
Oh, definitely. No. As one famous singer said, the most useful word in the profession is no. But it takes some courage to do that.
If there's somebody listening wanting to eventually be, the recital partner of Kiri Te Kanawa or a Thomas Allen, somebody of that level, I mean, where do you actually start? Is it somebody that you sort of build a relationship with over decades, a Kiri Te Kanawa, say? How do you actually get to that level?
I think I got advice very early on, which I really resented, but proved to be very true. You need to be interested in their entire repertoire beyond the one piece that they might have suddenly turned up on your doorstep with. And when I was lucky enough to have had the one chance to coach Kiri, and she'd been my heroine from age of 14 or whatever, and I found myself playing all this repertoire I'd listened to again and again and again on my records. She dropped me at the station. I thought, I said to her, I'm never going to see you again, but this is what you should be singing. These are the pieces you should be learning for your next recital. And there was a little pause in time, a day or two, and then I got a call back, come and teach me those things. And then the whole thing escalated until she said, well, you're teaching me these things, so why am I getting someone else to play? You can do them. So I said, thank you.
How do you build that confidence, though, to be able to say to Dame Kiri Te Kanawa, this is what you should be singing, or this is a role?
It was, I don't know whether it was confidence. It was more excitement and knowing that was going to be the last time I'd ever see her, which fortunately proved wrong, but I didn't have anything to lose, so...
And are you, Jonathan, different if you are coaching a Kiri Te Kanawa or a Thomas Allen compared to coaching a young up-and-coming singer?
Absolutely not. I'll be more accommodating for where they are, but I'll be just as rigorous. But you can't ask for something unless you can show how to achieve it. The only time you can do that is if there's something vocal which is beyond your ken, and you say, this is wrong, you need to take this back to your teacher and get it sorted. But generally, no, I would do exactly the same. And I had a fantasy experience where I was wondering back in when I turned 30 if there are any singers I really desperately wanted to work with. And as a miracle, there was a phone call from the agent saying, would you work with this person? And she came round and she sang. And I said, well, this and this and this is wrong, but we're going to fix it. And she said, well, I just recorded this with Muti. And I said, well, it's still wrong, but we are going to fix it. And then I addressed a couple of other aspects of her singing, and she was thrilled because she said, no one dares tell me this anymore. And I'd rather that the people who wouldn't react like that don't work with me. That's fine. Go and find someone who'll stroke you and tell you you're wonderful. I'd like to tell you what's wrong, if it is wrong, and how to improve it.
And what about accompanying? The skills of a good accompanist and recital partner. What are the must-haves, must-do, must-not do?
Must-do is make your singer look fabulous. And that means they might hand you something musically or dynamically that really doesn't make any sense. And you have to somehow justify that with you. It's a conversation you're having. If they're a generous singer, they really are having a conversation. And there's nothing more exciting than that. I remember the first time with Tom Allen and played an introduction to a Haydn song, and there was this response where you suddenly realised you were having a dialogue rather than having to repeat exactly what you'd done in a rehearsal, which is death to music. You never try to do the same thing twice.
Yeah. Do you have to separate the coach from the accompanist sometimes?
Absolutely. I thought about that earlier with one of your other questions. You completely separate that. And when I was first invited by Kiri to do recital, she said, I want to know that you can switch off coach. And I said, absolutely. And it is a different thing. And even with the students, so there are sometimes when you play through a piece, and it was just to play through and because they have this thing coming up and they say, have you got anything to say? And I'm really sorry. I was in performance mode. I'm not listening like that.
So is it a difference? Is it a difference for the singer as well, or is it more a difference for you?
It should be a huge difference for the singer as well. Yeah, because there are these two sides of your brain, and the only one that should be on is the performance one, which is separate from the analytical part. And you cannot, even for a moment, have the analytical part flash on because the performance drops. And so you hear some very safe, careful singing, but yeah, it's nice enough. It doesn't do anything for you.
So how can somebody build on these skills with you then, Jonathan, and with the Solti work? How could a young artist listening maybe get involved?
You really have to take the text off the page and learn how to say it fluently, dramatically, in 101 different ways, till it really is truly fluent. And then, as I explained earlier on, the parameters that the composer's chosen on the score, you have to observe those, justify them, and maybe the music touches something in you that you can capitalise upon. But that's the only way. You really have to be fluent in the language. And a singer like Elizabeth Söderström, she said that she would never sing in any language until she was fluent in it. And she did that with Czech as well. She was extraordinary.
So just finally then, on a sort of a practical level, somebody listening thinking, oh, I like the sound of the Solti programme and the courses and so on. How can somebody catch your attention and get involved? You've mentioned some incredible alumni at the start. For somebody wanting to become like that, how can they interact with?
Well, on a day-to-day basis, I hear an awful lot of singers between the colleges and even on the young artist programmes. And sometimes, even like an Aigul right at the beginning, and I met her before she'd even taken part at the Opera House the first time, age 19, and I could hear something fabulous. And I said, right, when you're free, you're coming to Solti. And so she still did it, even though she'd already debuted at the Opera House as Carmen. Yeah. She still realised the value of that moment of study for 3 weeks, where the language is coached fantastically by the language coach, by the other coaches, and by the visiting stars. Then there's online. You look at the website, you fill out your application form, it's as basic as that. And I'm looking for a vocal colour that's appropriate, seriousness towards the job, because there was one person, when I asked why they wanted to come to Solti, they said they wanted a holiday in Italy, so that didn't work. And then, because the scholarships are worth approximately 15,000 each person, I want to know that that person is really going to capitalise on that and work properly. And if those things come together, they'll have a place.
And how many do you take in a year?
12. 6 pianists for the Venice course, but then 12 singers for the summer programme.
And if you get in, life-changing.
It can be. It seems to have been for quite a few people now, which really, it moves me. It's very exciting.
Well, hopefully this won't be the last time that the listener hears from Jonathan Papp.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Well, I hope that was a helpful chat for you. And if it was, the whole Classeek 15 series is available on the usual podcast platforms and online at classeek.com. While you're there, do check out our video library too. It's called Insights by Classeek, extended conversations on film with leading industry professionals, a subscription series with topics like media and PR and artist management. You can subscribe via insights.classeek.com. All the while, Classeek 15 continues with me, Jack Pepper. Grateful for your company today and hoping we can do this again soon.